Jared never thought marriage would come to him like this. On Earth, people dreamed of love, courtship, and gentle promises whispered under the stars. But on the far edge of colonized space, things were different. Life was not about dreams. It was about survival. And survival meant making alliances, even if they came wrapped in silence and shadows. The colony was small, fragile, and always under threat. Supplies were thin, neighbors were suspicious, and raiders stalked the border systems like wolves. To keep their home alive, the council had turned to the ancient Valari clans, aliens whose customs were older than most human nations, whose power stretched across stars. The Valari offered protection, but they asked for something in return, a bond, a marriage, not a union of love but of necessity, a human and a Valari, tied together as a living symbol of peace. And Jared was chosen. He was not a hero nor a leader, just a worker who fixed machines and kept the colony's old power cores humming. Yet somehow the council placed the weight of this strange union on his shoulders. Maybe because he was steady. Maybe because he had no family to lose, he accepted without protest. What else could he do? If his yes meant his people would be safe, then his own heart mattered little. The ceremony came swiftly. It was not like the weddings Jared had once seen in old holofilms. No music, no laughter, no smiles. Only silence, broken by the low hum of Valari voices chanting words he could not understand. He stood in the great hall beneath banners of silver and violet, while his bride entered cloaked in heavy fabric, her face hidden by a long veil. She never spoke. She never looked at him. Jared's chest tightened. He told himself not to care. This was not about him. This was not about her. This was about everyone else. The elder of the Valari stepped forward, carrying a glowing brand. Its light shifted like fire and ice, and Jared felt his breath catch. The elder pressed it gently against his palm. Pain lanced through him, sharp and searing, but he did not flinch. When it lifted, a mark remained. Lines of light curling like an unbroken circle burned into his skin. The elder turned to the veiled bride, pressing the same brand to her hand. She trembled slightly, but no sound escaped her lips. When it was done, she too bore the mark. Bonded, the elder declared, and that was it. No vows of love, no promises of devotion. Just a mark, a veil, and the heavy silence of strangers now tied for life. As the council members nodded in approval, Jared dared to glance sideways at his new wife. She stood utterly still, her face still hidden, her hands folded before her, her silence pressed against him like a wall. Was she unwilling, afraid, disgusted by him? He didn't know. When the hall emptied, when the echoes of chanting faded, Jared was left alone with her. The weight of the bond settled heavy in his chest. He cleared his throat, voice low. "I'm Jared," he said, the words sounding awkward in the vast quiet. She gave no reply. For a moment he thought she might not even understand him. But then very faintly she inclined her head. A small nod. Nothing more, and then she turned, walking ahead toward the chambers prepared for them. Jared followed, his heart pounding with questions that had no answers. Was she young or old? Kind or cruel? Did she even want to be here? The veil hid everything. The corridors stretched long and cold, the walls humming with ancient Valari technology. His footsteps echoed. Hers were almost soundless, like whispers on stone. Finally, they reached the chamber, a large room with dim violet light, carved symbols glowing faintly along the walls. She paused at the doorway. For a moment, Jared thought she might speak. Instead, she simply walked inside, her veil brushing against her shoulders like drifting smoke. Jared lingered at the threshold, staring at the mark glowing faintly on his palm. A bond he did not choose, a wife he had never seen, a silence deeper than any vow. He told himself again, this was for the colony, for survival. But in the quiet of that chamber, with only the sound of his own uncertain breath, he wondered if survival had ever felt so lonely. The chamber was quiet, almost too quiet. The air itself felt heavy, as if it carried secrets. Jared stood just inside the doorway, unsure whether to step further or to wait. His new wife, still veiled, had already crossed the room. She stood near the far wall, her back to him, her form outlined by the faint violet glow of the carved symbols. Jared swallowed hard. He was used to machines, to wires and tools, to problems he could solve with his hands. But this silence, this veil, this stranger was a mystery he didn't know how to touch. He cleared his throat softly. Suppose this is where we live now, he said, his voice awkward in the vast quiet. The woman did not answer. Her head bowed slightly as though she was listening but unwilling to speak. He tried again. I know this is not easy. It's not easy for me either. But maybe we can at least be friends. Still silence. For a moment, frustration sparked in Jared's chest. He had given up his freedom, his choice, his future for this bond. Couldn't she at least try? But as quickly as the thought came, guilt replaced it. He had no idea what she had given up, or what burdens she carried beneath that veil. Finally, she moved. Slowly, carefully, she lifted her hand. With trembling fingers, she reached up to the fabric covering her face. Jared's breath caught as the veil slipped away. His heart stuttered. She was not like any alien he had seen before. Her skin shimmered faintly as if tiny stars lived beneath it. Her eyes glowed silver, soft yet piercing, as though they could see the truth hidden in him. She was beautiful, yes, but her beauty carried pain. Along her neck and jaw ran deep scars, jagged and uneven, cutting through the glow of her skin like lightning frozen in place. She looked at him not with pride, not with anger, but with fear. I am Leora, she whispered, her voice trembling like a fragile string. Jared blinked, stunned. Leora, he repeated softly, tasting the name. She nodded once, then turned her face slightly as if ashamed of the scars. Jared felt his chest tighten. He had expected many things, indifference, hostility, maybe even arrogance. But he had not expected fear. And he had not expected this broken grace. This strange mixture of beauty and pain. Trying to soften his voice, he said, You don't need to hide from me. Her silver eyes flicked toward him, sharp and uncertain. For a moment it seemed she might speak again. But instead she lowered her gaze. Silence returned. The chamber felt colder now. Jared wished desperately for words that could bridge the distance between them. He wanted to tell her she was not alone, that he would not judge her, that he would try. But the words stuck in his throat. He feared saying the wrong thing, feared breaking something fragile before it had even begun. Finally, she moved again. She crossed the room slowly and sat on the edge of the wide bed carved from smooth stone. Her movements were graceful yet careful, as though each step carried weight. Jared followed, sitting down on the far side, leaving space between them. The silence stretched long, filled only by the faint hum of the glowing symbols. He turned his hand over, staring at the mark burned into his skin. The bond, a circle of light unbroken. He glanced at her hand and saw the same mark glowing faintly on her palm. Two strangers tied by fire. At last her voice broke the quiet. You were not told the truth. Jared's head turned sharply. The truth? Her hands tightened in her lap. Her eyes, when she finally met his, glimmered with pain. They gave you a wife no one else wanted. Jared felt his breath catch. His mind filled with questions, but his heart ached at the way she said it, like a wound long open, like a truth that had haunted her for years. And before he could answer, she looked away, her voice sinking to a whisper. You deserve better than me. The words hung heavy in the violet air. Jared sat frozen, staring at her fragile form, the scars that marked her, the fear in her eyes. He did not know her story yet, but in that moment he knew one thing with certainty. Whatever truth lay hidden, whatever past haunted her, he would not let her carry it alone. But how could he tell her that? The silence returned, deep and endless. Yet inside Jared something had begun to stir. Not just duty, not just survival. Something stronger, something human, and that was the beginning of everything. The night felt endless. Jared lay awake, staring at the faint glow of the symbols carved into the walls. Beside him, Leora sat with her back against the bed's headrest, silent as stone. She had spoken only once those painful words. You deserve better than me. They kept echoing in his mind. Finally, Jared could no longer keep quiet. His voice was soft, careful, almost pleading. Tell me, please, what happened to you? For a long time, she didn't move. He thought she would ignore him again. But then slowly she turned her silver eyes toward him. They were bright but heavy with shadows. My people call me cursed, she said, her voice low. They say I am unclean, broken. Do you know why they gave me to you, a stranger? Because they wanted me gone. Jared sat up, heart pounding. Why? Why would they say that about you? Her hands tightened into fists. For a moment, anger flickered in her gaze, but it quickly faded into something sadder, something like shame. I was born to be a warrior priestess, she whispered. One of the Valari's chosen, trained to fight, to guard the sacred halls, to carry the songs of our ancestors. I was proud, strong, whole. She paused, her scars glowing faintly under the violet light. But raiders came. They captured me, took me far from my home. And there, they broke me. They cut into me, changed me, scarred me. When I escaped and returned, my clan did not welcome me. They did not see a survivor. They saw a tainted vessel. A shame. Her voice cracked and she turned her face away as if the memories were knives. Jared's chest ached. He wanted to reach out to touch her hand, but he stopped himself. She was fragile and trust was not easily given. They gave me to you, she continued bitterly, because no Valari would take me. They said, let her go to the human. Let her be his burden. That way they would not need to look at me anymore. Silence filled the chamber again. Heavy. Crushing. Jared struggled to breathe. He had thought this bond was about politics, about alliance and survival. But now he saw the truth. It was exile. They had thrown her away. He finally found his voice. Leora, you are not a burden. Her head snapped toward him, her silver eyes flashing. Do not lie to me. I see the way you looked at my scars. I see your pity. Jared shook his head firmly. I don't pity you. I only see someone who's been hurt. Someone who survived. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger than all of them. Her lips parted as if his words had struck something deep inside. But instead of replying, she looked down at her hands, trembling. For a long time, neither spoke. Jared leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes. His chest felt heavy, but not with regret. With determination. If her people had cast her aside, then he would not. At last, her voice came again, quieter than before. Why do you say such things? You don't know me. You don't know what I've done. You don't know what I carry inside. Jared opened his eyes and looked straight at her. Then let me know. Tell me everything. I will listen. And no matter what you say, I won't turn away. Leora's eyes filled with something unfamiliar, something fragile, like hope. But hope was dangerous for someone who had been broken so many times. So she said nothing more that night. She turned away, wrapping herself in the folds of her veil, and let silence swallow her again. But Jared saw the way her hands shook. He saw the way her shoulders trembled. And he knew she wanted to believe him. She just didn't know how. As sleep finally came, Jared made a quiet promise in his heart. He would not give up. He would show her day by day that she was not a curse, not a shame, not a burden. She was his wife now. And if no one else would fight for her, then he would. That promise was the first spark of something greater than duty. It was the beginning of love. Days turned into weeks, and silence became the language between Jared and Leora. They lived in the same chamber, ate at the same table, and walked the same cold corridors. Yet it often felt as if miles of distance stretched between them. Jared tried. Every morning he greeted her. Every evening he spoke small words, telling her about the machines he fixed or the work he did around the colony. He told little stories, simple and human, hoping to make her smile. But Leora listened in silence, her silver eyes calm and unreadable. Sometimes Jared wondered if she hated him. Other times he thought she was simply afraid to care. One evening, storms rolled across the outpost. The sky outside turned dark green and lightning flickered across the dome that protected their colony. Jared returned from work soaked in sweat and dust, expecting to find Leora inside their room. But she wasn't there. Alarm filled his chest. He searched the halls, then pushed open the outer hatch. What he saw froze his heart. Leora stood outside, her veil gone, her luminous skin exposed to the storm. Acid rain hissed against her glowing scars, smoke rising where drops touched her. Yet she didn't move. She stood still, her face lifted to the sky as if daring the storm to break her. Leora, Jared shouted, running toward her. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back under the shelter. The rain burned against his own skin, stinging like fire, but he didn't care. Inside, he turned on her, breathless and angry. What are you doing? That rain could kill you! Her silver eyes met his. They were calm. Too calm. And full of something that made Jared's heart ache. Pain, she said softly. It reminds me that I am still alive. The words struck him like a blade. Jared clenched his fists, struggling to control the storm rising inside him. You can't keep doing this to yourself. You survived things no one should. You're stronger than anyone I've met. Why can't you see that? Her lips trembled, but her voice was sharp. Stronger? Do you call these scars strength? She pulled back the fabric from her neck, showing the jagged lines that glowed faintly in the dim light. Do you call the whispers of my people strength? They see me as broken, and you? You speak as if I am whole. You don't know me. Jared stepped closer, his voice rough. Then let me know you. Stop shutting me out. Stop punishing yourself. Her eyes flashed, silver fire burning in them. And what if the truth disgusts you? What if you see what I've become and you regret being tied to me? Jared's chest ached at her words. He wanted to shake her, to make her understand. Instead, he reached out, his voice breaking. I will never regret you. Do you understand? Never. For the first time, her mask cracked. Leora's hands shook and her breath caught in her throat. Tears shining like liquid silver welled in her eyes. She turned away quickly, pressing her hands against the wall, her back trembling. You shouldn't say such things. I don't deserve them. Jared stood behind her, his own heart raw. Then I'll keep saying them until you believe me. Silence stretched again, heavy and sharp. The storm outside raged, the dome groaning under the weight of wind and acid rain. Inside, two hearts clashed, one desperate to give love, the other terrified to accept it. Leora finally whispered, almost too soft to hear. Why do you care so much? Jared answered without hesitation. Because no one else ever did. And because I see you, even if you don't believe it yet. Her shoulders trembled harder. She didn't reply, but she didn't move away from him either. That night they lay in silence again, but it was different. The wall between them had cracked. Jared felt it. He knew she had felt it too. It was not love yet, not trust, not healing, but it was the first spark of something greater than the pain she carried. And Jared swore to himself that he would not let that spark die. Days passed, each one slower than the last, but Jared did not give up. He learned to move quietly around the chamber when she was reading or meditating. He left her meals prepared just the way she liked, though she often refused to eat. He told her small stories about the colony, about the machines he fixed, about the stars they could see from the dome. At first she only listened, silent and still, her silver eyes like mirrors reflecting his words back at him. But Jared noticed little things. The way her shoulders would relax when he told a funny story. The way her eyes lingered a moment longer on his face before she looked away. Small signs easily missed by anyone else but not by him. One evening he found her sitting near the chamber window, gazing out at the horizon. The twin moons hung low in the sky, casting pale light over the colony. You like the moons? Jared asked gently. She turned slightly, her silver eyes catching the moonlight. They remind me of home, she whispered. Jared sat beside her, careful not to crowd her. Then I'll tell you about our home too, he said softly. Not Earth, this colony, our little patch in the stars. Maybe someday you'll see it as your home too. For the first time, Leora's lips curved slightly upward. It was barely a smile, but it was a beginning. As days turned into nights, Jared kept doing small things. He repaired broken tools for her without asking. He cleaned her chamber when she refused. He spoke softly when storms shook the dome. He never forced her to answer, never demanded her attention. And slowly, ever so slowly, Leora began to respond. One night, after a long day of repairs outside, Jared returned to find her waiting by the doorway, the glow of her scars dimmed under the chamber lights. She held a small crystal in her hand. For you, she said, her voice low. It reminded me of your story. Jared took it, stunned. The crystal shimmered softly, like the stars themselves, and he realized she had made it for him. Thank you, he whispered, his heart swelling. This means more than I can say. She nodded, turning back toward her chamber, but for the first time she did not hide behind the veil. She let him see her face fully as she was. No fear, no shame. Only a fragile, flickering trust. Over the next days they began sharing small moments. A shared meal. A conversation about the stars. A quiet evening watching the moons rise. Jared never pushed too far, never asked too much. And Leora, in her own way, started to come alive again. One evening she finally spoke without hesitation. I used to think that strength meant hiding fear, that survival meant hiding pain. But maybe it is stronger to let someone see you. Jared reached for her hand. She hesitated, then allowed him to hold it. The warmth of her skin against his palm was a spark that lit something deep inside both of them. You've been through so much, he said softly. But you are not alone anymore. Not while I'm here. Her silver eyes glimmered with unshed tears. I want to believe you, she whispered. And I will help you, he said firmly. Every day until you do. That night they sat side by side, not touching the walls or hiding from one another. They spoke in whispers, sharing pieces of their past, small memories, fears, and dreams. The bond that had begun as duty, as exile, now carried something warmer, something human. For the first time since their union, neither felt completely alone, and Jared knew in his heart that this was only the beginning. Trust had to be earned, love had to be nurtured, but the first spark had been lit. A human heart, simple and unyielding, was beginning to heal a broken soul, and that was a power stronger than any weapon, stronger than any clan. Peace on the frontier was fragile. Jared had learned that quickly. He had expected storms, mechanical failures, and raiders, always raiders, but he had not expected them tonight. Alarms blared through the colony, piercing the quiet evening. Red lights flashed, casting harsh shadows across the chambers. Jared grabbed a rifle from the wall, heart hammering. The Valarian human workers scattered, panic in their steps. Then he saw her. Leora stood at the edge of the chamber doorway, her silver eyes glowing like twin moons. Her posture was calm, almost eerily so, yet the air around her seemed to hum with latent energy. The scars along her neck and arms glimmered faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the alarm. She did not hesitate. Jared ran to the hatch, rifle ready, and found raiders swarming the outer walls. Machines sparking, alarms wailing, human colonists scrambling for cover. Fear tightened his chest, but he was not prepared for what came next. Leora moved like a shadow and a storm combined. She struck at the raiders with precise, devastating force, faster than any human or any Valari could move. The glow from her scars flared as her fists and feet landed blows that knocked enemies back, shattered weapons, and threw armored raiders across the floor. Jared's breath caught. He had known she was strong, but this was something else. She was not broken. She was not weak. She was a hurricane contained within a fragile frame, unstoppable and fierce. He lowered his rifle, watching, awestruck. She moved without fear, without hesitation, without mercy for the invaders. Every strike was a message: I survived. I am not your victim. When the last raider fell, the silence that followed was deafening. Smoke rose from the scorched floor, and the colony shivered under the weight of what had just happened. Jared approached her cautiously. She was breathing heavily, but her stance was still proud, still untamed. I didn't know you could," he stammered, awe in his voice. She looked at him, her silver eyes flashing. "You never needed to know," she said softly, almost sadly. "I am what I am. Strength is not a gift to be shown, it is survival. And now you see it." Jared felt his chest tighten. He realized something important. Her scars, her past, her pain, they did not define her. Her courage, her strength, her will to protect, not just herself but him and the colony, defined her. "You were never cursed," he said quietly, stepping closer. "Never useless. You are extraordinary." Her shoulders sank slightly at his words, but the fire in her eyes remained. For the first time, she allowed herself to look at him fully, without veils, without shame. I almost forgot," she whispered, voice trembling. "I was afraid you would see me like everyone else. Afraid you would turn away." Jared reached for her hand. She didn't pull back. "I see you, Leora," he said firmly, "and I will never turn away. Not ever." Tears shone in her glowing eyes. For a moment, vulnerability and strength mingled in a single look. The colony began to recover. The raiders' threat finally ended. But for Jared, the real battle had already been won. Inside the room, inside the bond they had forged. She had shown him her power, her courage, her survival, and in return he had shown her trust, acceptance, and unwavering loyalty. That night they sat together in silence, side by side, letting the adrenaline fade and the quiet take its place. Neither spoke much. They didn't need to. The storm outside had passed. But the storm within them, the fear, the pain, the past had been tested and tempered. For the first time, Jared felt something that went beyond duty, beyond survival. Pride, awe, and slowly, a deeper emotion he could barely name. Respect, admiration, love, and for the first time, Leora allowed herself to feel it too. Not just trust, but the fragile warmth of hope. A light in the darkness that she had never thought possible again. The bond between human and Valari, forged by duty, now carried the fire of something greater, mutual understanding, strength, and an unspoken promise that they would face the galaxy together. Jared knew, in his heart, that this was only the beginning. If she could survive this together, they could survive anything. The battle had passed, but its echoes lingered. Smoke curled from the scorched walls, and the colony trembled as the raiders fled. Jared had expected relief, but instead he felt an ache in his chest. He knew the real struggle had only just begun, not against outsiders, but within the quiet space between him and Leora. She stood a few paces away, her silver eyes soft but wary. The glow of her scars had dimmed, but they still pulsed faintly with the memory of the fight. For a moment she looked like a fragile creature, yet Jared could feel the strength still burning beneath her surface. I didn't know you were so strong," he said quietly, his voice trembling. She shook her head, a small wry smile touching her lips. "Strength is not something I show willingly. Only when I must." Jared stepped closer. "But you don't have to hide from me anymore. You don't have to fight alone." Her eyes flicked away, uncertain. "And if I falter? If I fail? Then I will be here," Jared said firmly. "You won't falter alone. You won't fail alone. Not while I'm here." For a long moment she said nothing. Then slowly she took a step toward him. Another, until the space between them disappeared entirely. She lowered her head slightly and he reached up, gently cupping her glowing face in his hands. "You've been given to me," he whispered, voice soft but steady. "But I choose you, Leora. Not because I have to, not because it's expected. I choose you because I see you. All of you. Every scar, every fear, every ounce of strength. And I will not let anyone or anything take you from me." Her silver eyes glimmered, tears spilling freely now. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let herself lean into his touch, letting him hold her, steady and warm. I never thought anyone could see me like that," she whispered. "Not after everything. Not after they cast me aside." Jared shook his head gently. "They were wrong. You are not broken. You are extraordinary, and I will spend every day proving it to you if I must." For the first time since he had met her, Leora allowed herself to smile openly. It was fragile, yes, but it was real. And when she reached up to touch his cheek, her fingers brushing against his rough skin, he felt a fire ignite inside him. A warmth that had nothing to do with survival or duty. That night they finally lay side by side, not separated by walls, veils, or silence. They spoke quietly, sharing pieces of themselves, their fears, their pasts, their hopes for the future. Every word, every glance, every touch was a bridge across the distance that had once divided them. And Jared realized something profound. Humanity was more than flesh and bone. It was courage, resilience, and the ability to care when no one else would. It was the capacity to see beauty in someone who had been discarded, to offer love where only fear had lived. Leora, in turn, realized that strength was not about hiding pain or surviving alone. True strength was letting someone in, letting someone see, letting someone love, even when it terrified her. By the time dawn painted the sky with pale gold and violet, the bond between them was no longer just a symbol of politics or survival. It was a living, breathing connection, forged through fear, pain, trust, and unwavering human determination. Jared held her hand as they watched the twin moons rise again. "No matter what comes next," he said softly, "we face it together, and I promise you will never feel alone again." Leora leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I believe you," she whispered. "For the first time, I truly believe you." The stars above the colony seemed to shine brighter that morning, as if the galaxy itself had witnessed the union of two souls who had chosen each other against all odds. A human had been given a bride no one wanted, and instead of fear he gave her courage. Instead of indifference he gave her love, and in that love, she had found her place again. It was a quiet, simple truth, but one more powerful than any weapon, stronger than any army, and more enduring than any empire in the stars. Humans might be fragile. Humans might be small. Humans might be ordinary in a galaxy full of wonders, but humans could see the light in others, and sometimes that was enough to change the universe. And together, Jared and Leora were unstoppable.